Coming up on a newscast, South Korea's domestically produced space rocket is moved to launch pad. After 2 delays, Nuri is expected to blast off as scheduled on Tuesday. South Korean stocks plunge again on fears of a global recession. This comes as interest rates are rising across the world. Leader of NATO and the UK's Prime Minister warns Western allies to be prepared for the war in Ukraine to last years. They also call for steadfast support, including on efforts to gain EU membership. Hello, your week's off to a smooth start. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea's first homegrown space rocket, Nuri, is scheduled to finally blast off for its second launch on Tuesday. Engineers finished D-1 inspections at the NATO Space Center. Our Han Sung-woo is on the site. He files us this report.
Vowing to open the doors to space for the country, the Korea Aerospace Research Institute has revealed that final preparations for Nuri's second launch, scheduled for Tuesday afternoon, are moving along smoothly.
For now, we're preparing for the launch with 4 p.m. as our target. When exactly the launch will take place will be finalized and announced after Tuesday afternoon's Launch Management Committee meeting, where safety-related issues and other details will be reviewed.
Nuri currently stands on the launch pad connected to all of its umbilical cables, with the weather forecast in the rocket's favor as well. The cables will link Nuri to its control room and provide the rocket with fuel and oxidizers moments before the launch. Monday's developments come after a technical glitch detected 1 day before Nuri's previous launch date suspended the $1.8 billion project mid last week. Luckily, engineers managed to replace a key part of the problematic oxidizer level sensor in the rocket's first stage without disassembling the rocket, allowing the country to launch Nuri within its alternative launch window, which ends this Thursday. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News, Go-heung.
With the launch of Nuri scheduled for Tuesday, attention is focused on the event being a successful one on the first go. But how exactly does the homegrown rocket make its way to space? Song Yoo-jin guides us through the process.
South Korea's first homegrown space rocket, Nuri, will take off on Tuesday for what will be its second launch. Attention is focused on whether South Korea will become the world's 7th country that can launch a satellite into orbit weighing more than a ton. But what happens once Nuri is launched? The 200-ton vehicle is made up of 3 stages. The first, at the very bottom, will separate from the vehicle around 2 minutes after launch when it reaches 59 kilometers. The fairing, a shield that protects the satellites on board, will be deployed at around 4 minutes at an altitude of 191 kilometers. The Stage 2 rocket will break away at around 4.5 minutes, 258 kilometers above the Earth's surface. If everything goes as planned, Nuri will reach its target altitude of 700 kilometers at 14 minutes and 57 seconds. Then the separation of the third stage will begin, starting with the 180-kilogram performance verification satellite. It's a new addition to the launch, as the first try last year only included a dummy. The satellite will also include 4 smaller cube satellites, which it will shoot out to orbit. This will be the first time in history for a satellite to shoot out another satellite. And finally, about 2 minutes later, the 1.3-ton dummy satellite will separate at the same altitude. It will take about half an hour to assess whether both satellites successfully parted from Nuri. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
With most distancing measures lifted, data shows a big recovery in consumer spending, especially related to travel. But that could be reversed soon, with spiking prices and rising interest rates causing mortgage payments to go up. Here's Kim Jeon with a breakdown of the digits.
It's the middle of a weekday afternoon, but this train station in downtown Seoul is unusually crowded with people who had put off holiday plans earlier this year due to the coronavirus outbreak.
The number of Korail users jumped 150% compared to early this year. It's so packed in Seoul Station that there's no room to even wiggle.
According to the Credit Finance Association, credit card transactions in the month of April have jumped 11% compared to the same period last year to more than $70 billion. In particular, transportation-related spending has spiked nearly 70% on year to around $838 million.
Contactless payment systems are now increasingly becoming the norm, apart from among senior citizens, contributing to a revitalization of consumer spending.
Disposable income has climbed nearly 9% per person compared to a year earlier, but the Bank of Korea warns that consumer spending could deteriorate in the near future due to high inflation and high interest rates. The BOK had warned the possibility of a big step rate hike of 0.5 percentage points later this year instead of its usual 1/4 of a percentage point increments.
Big rate hikes following inflation could ultimately curtail spending and net income.
The expert said the country's house mortgage loans could spike into the 8% range for the first time since the 2008 financial crisis from the current 7% range, making it more expensive for people to borrow money. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
President Yoon is calling for bipartisan cooperation on legislation related to people's livelihoods. On his way to work on Monday, the South Korean leader told reporters that he would have proposed reform bills to address the economy had the National Assembly been functioning normally, a reference to conflicts in parliament over who will lead the committee in the second half of the year. As for concerns about a potential recession, Yoon said those issues are hard to address in a fundamental way because problems are coming from higher interest rates around the world. Meeting with senior aides, the president ordered officials to review the rules on housing leases. Stocks in Seoul closed at their lowest since late 2020 amid a selling spree led by foreign investors. Due to aggressive monetary tightening by the U.S. and concerns over global recession, the local currency touched an intraday low for the year. Ji-young helps us look beyond the figures.
The South Korean stock market remained bearish on Monday, touching its lowest points so far this year. The country's benchmark Kospi fell below the 2,400 threshold during trading on Monday and closed at little above 2,390. This is the first time since November 4th, 2020 that the index closed below the 2,400 mark. It led losses among the Asia-Pacific's major markets, losing more than 2% from the previous trading day. The tech-heavy Kosdaq also hit its lowest point in 2022. It opened at around 804 on Monday, up roughly 0.7% higher from Friday, but it headed downward. The index closed below 770, the lowest figure since July 2020. Shares of industry heavyweight Samsung Electronics closed at around $45, falling more than 25% compared to the early months of this year. One analyst says the drop is due to foreign investors who hold almost 1/3 of Seoul's stocks.
Massive selling by foreign investors was the major reason behind the bearish market today. The stock market is likely to head down in the near future as companies' earnings slow and consumption decreases amid accelerating economic recession and high inflation.
The South Korean currency has also been losing ground against the strengthening U.S. dollar. On Monday, the won fell to an intraday low for this year to 1,293 won against the dollar, breaking the record set just last Wednesday. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said on Monday that the government will take action to address any instability in the financial or foreign exchange market. Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Some experts believe there's nearly a 50% chance the U.S. economy will face recession within a year. Wall Street Journal surveyed 53 economists on that scenario. The average response on the possibility of a recession coming within a year stood at 44%. Amid the soaring inflation and fuel costs due to the war in Ukraine, it recorded the highest figure since the agency first started the survey in 2005. At the start of the 2007 global financial crisis, it stood at 38%. In February 2020, right before the COVID-19 outbreak, it was 26%. However, U.S. financial authorities, including the Treasury Secretary, pointed out America's recession isn't inevitable. As the population continues to shrink, South Korea will review scrapping the corporate retirement age. That will mean banning companies from capping the salaries of older workers, a practice that has encouraged this group to hang up their jackets earlier than expected. Kim Hyun-sung has the details.
People in South Korea may have to retire much later than at age 60. According to the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Monday, the government is to discuss ways to keep people in the workforce longer to make up for Korea's dwindling working age population. One of the solutions that they're mulling over is pushing back the age they can start receiving their state pension. As part of their discussion, they're also considering removing the company's salary cap that corporations have put in place for those who are near retirement. But this may spark a heated generational conflict. Many consider employment to be a zero-sum game, meaning one person's gain is another's loss. And the younger generations may feel that their opportunities will be limited if they're competing with older adults. Paying seniors accordingly to their experience without a salary cap could also place more of a burden on corporations. So without any promise as to when these changes will come, South Korea faces a steep population drop. Experts at Statistics Korea project that in 30 years, Korea is going to lose more than a third of its working population. How far along is South Korea on that downward trajectory? Statistics Korea will announce the latest updates this Wednesday. Also coming up this Friday, the Finance Ministry is set to launch a task force that will discuss Korea's population crisis. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's daily COVID-19 tally dropped to the 3,000 range, the lowest figure since early January. From Monday, nursing homes will permit in-person visits by unvaccinated people as well. They'll just need to make appointments and bring a negative test result. Lee Kyung-eun brings the updates.
Care homes and nursing hospitals were the last places with COVID-19 restrictions in place. The measures included a ban on in-person visits for unvaccinated people and limiting the number of visitors to 4.
인원 제한이 있어가지고
다 못 들어왔어, 엄마.
하고 다른 사람
밖에서.
But starting Monday, face-to-face visits are allowed for anyone regardless of their vaccination status. And people no longer have to abide by the 4-visitor rule if reservations are made in advance and a negative COVID-19 test result is provided. Also starting Monday, patients at these facilities are free to go outside if they had 4 shots or been infected after getting 2 shots. Up until now, they were only allowed to leave care facilities for medical purposes. The ease restrictions come as the country's daily cases have remained below the 10,000 mark for 10 days. There were 3,538 cases reported on Monday, the lowest in 160 days. This largely due to a boost in natural immunity following the massive Omicron outbreak. However, health authorities are still concerned about the 100 fatalities reported on a weekly basis, as well as the prospect of another wave of infections expected in fall or even earlier, as they say people's immunity will likely weaken. While authorities are preparing response measures for a future wave, they will also start discussing vaccinating young children aged from 6 months to 5 years old, in line with a similar decision made by the U.S. FDA. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
South Korea's Office of National Security is currently reviewing Japan's proposal to hold a quadrilateral summit on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Madrid. This was confirmed by the top office on Monday following a report in the Yomiuri Shimbun. According to the paper, Tokyo is considering holding a summit with South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. The 4 are expected to come together to oppose Beijing's attempts to unilaterally change the status quo in the East and South China Seas. Reportedly, a high-ranking official from Japan has put a possible Seoul-Tokyo summit on hold, saying an appropriate environment hasn't been created. South Korea and the U.S. are pursuing independent sanctions against Pyongyang, a move that can fill a gap arising from UNSC measures. This came during the press briefing on Monday on the outcome of the top diplomat's recent visit to the States. A foreign ministry official said independent sanctions on the North can also act as a warning message to those economically engaged with the reclusive state. He added that it can reflect international cooperation as well. However, the allies only agreed on the idea and the details have not been discussed. Amid mounting tensions as North Korea prepares for a possible nuclear test, Seoul's Air Force kicked off the Soaring Eagle exercise. The aerial combat drill includes multiple training scenarios such as detecting and intercepting targets from long distance and attacking key enemy forces using a wide range of warplanes, including F-35A stealth fighters and F-15Ks, with around 200 troops. Soaring Eagle has been conducted twice annually since 2008, but hasn't been held publicly in 5 years. The first session of the year will last for 5 days. The remains of a Korean War veteran from Canada returned to South Korea on Monday, a day before being laid to rest at the UN Memorial Cemetery in Busan. The Ministry of Veterans Affairs held a short ceremony at Incheon International Airport for John Robert Cormier, who fought in the Korean War for about a year from April 1952 when he was 19. Before passing last November, his family was told he wished to be buried in South Korea. This is the 14th time the remains of a Korean War vet are brought to South Korea from their home country. The head of NATO and the UK's PM warned Western allies to prepare for the war in Ukraine to last years. They also highlighted the need to keep providing steadfast support for the country, which is waiting to gain EU membership. Min Suk-hyun has the latest.
Western leaders are warning their allies to brace for a long war in Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Sunday that the war in Ukraine could last for years, urging allies to continue to support Ukraine even if the costs are high. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who visited Kyiv last week, made similar comments, calling on partners not to turn their backs on Ukraine. He stressed that everything will depend on whether Ukraine can defend its soil faster than Russia can renew its capacity to attack. And for that, he said, Ukraine must receive weapons, equipment, ammunition, and more training. Against this backdrop, Russia has intensified its assaults on Ukraine's eastern Donbas region. The industrial city of Severodonetsk faced heavy artillery and rocket fire again on Sunday, while its twin city, Lysychansk, saw destruction of several residential buildings. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he expects Russia to further intensify its attacks this week as Kyiv awaits a historic decision. That is, whether it will be granted candidate status in its bid to join the European Union.
Obviously, we should expect greater hostile activity from Russia purposefully, this week exactly, and not only against Ukraine, but also against other European countries. We are preparing. We are ready. We are warning our partners.
Zelensky said joining the EU would be among the most fateful decisions in Ukraine's history, adding that only a positive decision would meet the interests of the whole of Europe. The ongoing war is pressuring EU governments to fast-track Ukraine's candidacy, but the process is expected to take years to complete. The European Council is set to make the final decision after a two-day summit in Brussels starting Thursday. Meanwhile, Ukraine's parliament on Sunday voted to ban Russian music in media and public spaces. This, however, will not apply to all Russian music, but rather to music created or performed by post-Soviet artists. The parliament also voted to ban books imported from Russia, Belarus, and other occupied Ukrainian territories, in part to break its remaining ties with Moscow. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
June 20th is World Refugee Day, dedicated to recognizing the struggles of refugees and to thank the host countries. By last month, some 100 million people were forcibly displaced around the world. Those figures were accelerated by the Ukraine crisis. Choi Min-jung has the full story.
June 20th marks World Refugee Day. It's a day dedicated to honoring refugees around the globe who have fled their homes in search of safety. And for many, it will be the actual day they are forced to move across borders simply to survive.
I'm a single parent. I have 3 children. There are no benefits there. The only way to survive is to rely on humanitarian aid.
We decided to leave. It is very difficult. No electricity, no water, no gas, nothing. How are we to live? Shelling, it has become very scary.
10 weeks after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the world reached a grim milestone. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the global refugee population is at a record high, with the total number of people forcibly displaced hitting 100 million in May. He noted that the war in Ukraine has resulted in the largest and fastest displacement in Europe since World War II. This year's theme of Right to Seek Safety highlights that everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, has the right to cross borders safely. Against this backdrop, the UN chief urged countries to keep their doors and hearts open to refugees.
My appeal to developed countries is you need to meaningfully increase the number of resettlement opportunities in your country, because it is so different to allow them to fully integrate in your societies or to keep them barely surviving in some of the most dramatically dangerous places in the world.
Watchers say countries worldwide must step up efforts to help refugees, as the cultural and economic assets that they provide will ultimately benefit society as a whole. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the new BTS anthology album has topped the Billboard 200 chart, securing the group its sixth #1 album. Proof sold 314,000 equivalent album units in the U.S. in the first week of its release. The majority of the sales were of the CD version. Proof was released 4 days before the K-pop band announced plans to explore solo projects. Im Yoon is crowned the winner of the 2022 Van Cliburn International Piano Competition, becoming the youngest ever to achieve this feat. The 18-year-old, who started competing at 14, played Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 3 and Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. Im will receive a prize of $100,000 along with 3 years of personal career management, including international concert tours, and he'll record a studio album. Russian pianist Anna Janishine took the silver. Care farming is the use of farming practices to advance healing or to offer educational care support. One county in Jeollanam-do province is seeking to make this therapeutic system a regional attraction. Jung Eun-ju explains further.
This is a parrot experience center in Gohung-gun County, Jeollanam-do province. Parrots show off their colorful plumage to visitors, soar into the air in groups before descending to feed. A horseback riding experience center is also in full swing at a farm set up by a couple who left city life and moved to Jeju Island. Experiences like these are known as care farming or healing agriculture, and they're becoming popular in South Korea.
I came to ride horses because my school told me to. It's fun when the horse slows down and then goes faster.
We hope to create a friendly environment where people could meet horses. So people come here to meet and feed their horses and experience horseback riding.
Courses are taught at the Gohung-gun County Agricultural Technology Center to train people how to run these kinds of experience centers. Even on lazy afternoons, 30 or so people fill the classrooms eager to learn.
It seems that Gohung, which is currently falling behind in industrialization, has become a great place to develop and educate people about healing agriculture.
The center is over 7 hectares big, and before the pandemic, about 20,000 people came from all over the country.
Gohung is called a roofless art museum because of its beautiful mountains, sea and clean farmlands. I think this natural environment is the best place to develop healing agriculture for modern people to recover their exhausted minds and bodies.
Officials say they aim to establish the region as a mecca for care farming and healing agriculture by setting the industry standards. Jung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
Sweltering temperatures will continue for much of South Korea tomorrow. Most regions will see daytime highs exceeding 30 degrees Celsius. In fact, heat wave advisories have been issued across many parts of inland regions. For parts of Gyeongsang-buk-do province, conditions will be especially hot with heat wave warnings in place. A monsoonal rain front is moving towards the south of the peninsula. This will produce on and off showers for Jeju Island starting tonight. Showers will spread across the south coast by tomorrow morning. Partly cloudy skies are in the forecast for Gohung, Jeollanam-do province tomorrow. The launch of South Korea's homegrown rocket Nuri will take place there at 4 p.m. at NATO Space Center. Wind speed will be gusting up to 1 to 3 meters per second, which is considered fairly mild. Morning lows in Seoul and Busan will be kicking off at 22 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul and Daegu will be reaching 33 degrees. Daejeon and Gwangju will hit 34 degrees Celsius. Frequent showers are in the forecast for the south of the country this week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.